The doors of death are lubricated by the tears of grieving men. For death is the domain of the Father, just as birth is the realm of the mother. It's the responsibility of the Father's Spirit in men and in women to prepare individuals for death through mythology and experiential modeling. This is so important for young males who have no role models to show them how to deal with their swelling feelings of violence. In classical Western mythology, there are two death gods, Hades, the male, and Tellus, the female. The rites of Tellus are within the cycle of fertility, rites for the return to life, not as an aid for efforts to go beyond life. The invisible Hades, on the other hand, cares nothing for life. His underworld is more than the lifetime-space continuum. Death, as the domain of the Father, does not induce violence. James Hillman quoted the Hungarian scholar Karoly Kerenyi, who said, "Mildness is Hades' characteristic trait," unquote. When ill prepared to deal with detachment from the mother, the male spirit is perverted into ill-used violence. These are my words. The spiritual work then materializes on the physical plane. The prepared male spirit does not rape women or children. The wise male does not invent penis-shaped missiles or seed-shaped cluster bombs. The initiated male does not interfere with the birthing processes in techno-medical excess. Where such things do occur, the male spirit is still attached to mother and is neurotically trying to cut that attachment in a sideways manner on the physical plane instead of the psychic one. If death is the domain of the Father, is it any wonder that through the ages the male was the hunter, the maker of weapons, the one fascinated intellectually and emotionally with death and the need for death? A few generations of effort for behavioral change does not stifle that fascination, but it perverts it. The prepared male knows when and how to use his knowledge of death, where the ill-prepared male does not. And our culture and its men are ill-prepared. Hillman writes, quote, "The death we speak of in our culture is a fantasy of the ego. Our culture is singular for its ignorance of death. What is most dead and buried in each of us is the culture's neglect of death. Hades only now begins to reappear in the ominous new concerns with the limits of growth, the energy crisis, ecological pollution, aging, and dying," unquote. Hillman points to the necessity for the resurrection of death itself, quote, "back to the place in the midst of the psychological life of each individual, which opens into depth at every step," unquote. Carlos Castaneda's Don Juan said to use death as an advisor. "When used in this way, pettiness disappears from the soul, thus from the life of the individual. When pettiness is gone, joy or terror or wisdom fills its place. The process creates the paradox of the prepared soul. When prepared to face death, the soul finds incredible joy in physical life. Grief mounts in more poignant heights as the necessity for death nears. Also, in the prepared soul, there is incredible humor. Joseph Campbell wrote that, quote, humor is the touchstone of the truly mythological, as distinct from the more literal-minded and sentimental theological mood, unquote. Men have been able to find humor at the face of death, not from a sense of denial, but from acknowledgement. The grim reaper may also be the grin reaper. The prepared man understands the role of death and his role with death. With understanding comes humor, tears of grief and the exhilaration of joy, and the mildness of wisdom. The Father carries the consciousness to deeper levels, and the ritual processes toward death are his legacy. It is, therefore, the responsibility of men to prepare for death and bring death into our midst with full acknowledgement and humor. Through our conscious efforts to put death in our midst with a reverence that equals our reverence for life, we return to the psychological balance which enhances our physical lives and prepares our souls to pass through the doors of death.